On my 75th birthday, they handed me a nursing home brochure wrapped like a gift. I smiled, said nothing. But after I read what they'd planned behind my back, I stood up, lifted my glass, and gave them an answer no one saw coming. Emily dropped her fork. Thomas went pale. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening from in the comments. My name's Frank Mitchell, widower of 6 years, retired civil engineer, father of 2 and grandfather of 4. Or at least, that's how I'd introduce myself at those awkward senior mixers my daughter keeps insisting I attend. "Dad, you need to get out more," she'd say, as if loneliness was something you could fix with cheese cubes and small talk. That morning started like any other. I woke up at 6:15. No alarm needed when you've kept the same schedule for 50 years. Made my coffee just the way Margaret used to make it. "Strong enough to put hair on your chest," she'd joke. God, I miss her laugh. I was reading the paper when my phone buzzed. A text from my son Michael. "Happy birthday, Dad. We'll see you at 4 for the surprise party that isn't supposed to be a surprise." I smiled. Subtlety was never Michael's strong suit. My daughter Emily was the opposite, always calculating, always planning. She'd been that way since she was little. While Michael climbed trees and skinned knees, Emily made lists and organized her toys by color. Now she organized other people's lives as a hospital administrator, and I was increasingly becoming her newest project. "You need to downsize, Dad. Have you thought about getting help with the yard? That's a lot of stairs for someone your age." Little comments dropped like breadcrumbs, leading somewhere I wasn't ready to go. I showered and dressed carefully that afternoon. My best blue button-down, the one Margaret bought me our last Christmas together. Dark slacks, polished shoes. You don't make it to 75 without learning to appreciate occasions. Michael picked me up at 3:30. His car smelled like fast food and sports equipment, a family man's car. His oldest boy was starting college in the fall. How had that happened? Wasn't he just learning to walk last week? "How's the birthday boy?" Michael grinned, squeezing my shoulder. "Still kicking," I replied, my standard answer. "Emily's gone all out. Fair warning." I nodded, watching the familiar streets pass by. We weren't heading to Michael's house as I'd expected, but to Emily's place in Oakwood Heights. The fancy neighborhood with manicured lawns and 3-car garages. Her husband Thomas was a financial advisor who wore suits even on weekends. "Did I tell you about that bridge project I worked on in '82? I asked, suddenly wanting to share something, anything, that reminded them I wasn't always just an old man. "The one in Montana?" Michael asked, eyes on the road. "Colorado. Toughest terrain I ever worked with. We had to recalculate the stress points 3 times because of the mountain winds." "That must have been something," he said. But his voice had that distracted quality that told me he was just being polite. Emily's house loomed ahead, a 2-story colonial with white columns and perfect symmetry. 3 cars already in the driveway. "More than just family, then? Remember to act surprised," Michael stage whispered as we walked to the door, the chorus of surprise. When we entered was genuinely startling, despite the warning. About 20 people stood in Emily's immaculate living room. Family, a few neighbors from my street, some faces I didn't recognize. Emily rushed forward to hug me, smelling of expensive perfume and hairspray. "Happy birthday, Dad." She kissed my cheek, leaving a lipstick mark I would later find in the bathroom mirror. "You didn't have to go to all this trouble," I said, meaning it. "Don't be silly." 75 is a milestone." The afternoon proceeded as these things do. Finger foods arranged in perfect spirals. Champagne in actual champagne flutes, not the plastic cups Michael would have used. My grandkids hugged me, then disappeared into the electronic glow of their devices. I made small talk, accepted congratulations, nodded at appropriate intervals when Thomas explained something about market fluctuations to a captive audience. After cake, carrot, my favorite. Though I suspected that was coincidence rather than consideration, Emily clinked her glass for attention. "Time for presents," she announced. The gifts were predictable. A sweater from Michael and his wife Karen, gift cards from the grandkids, a bottle of scotch from a neighbor. Then Emily handed me a thick envelope, tied with a silver ribbon. "This is from Thomas and me," she said, her voice carrying a note I couldn't quite identify. We put a lot of thought into it. The room grew quiet. I felt eyes on me as I untied the ribbon and opened the envelope. Inside was a glossy brochure. "Golden Sunset Retirement Community," read the flowing script above a photo of smiling seniors playing croquet on a manicured lawn. My hands went still. The room seemed to tilt slightly. "It's the premier assisted living facility in the state," Emily was saying, her voice sounding distant. "They have independent living apartments, but also full care if you need it. Thomas's mother loved it there." Thomas nodded gravely. "Best decision we ever made for her." I looked up from the brochure to find everyone watching me, expressions ranging from curiosity to pity. Emily looked triumphant, as if she'd solved a particularly challenging puzzle. "Open the rest, Dad," she urged. Beneath the brochure was a letter, a pre-approval for residency, a move-in date for next month. They'd already put down a deposit. Something old and fierce awoke in my chest. "You've already paid?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. "Just the deposit," Thomas interjected. "Fully refundable for 30 days, but they rarely have openings, so we jumped on it." "We've been on the waiting list for almost a year," Emily added. "Ever since you forgot to turn off the stove that time, once, after Margaret died. When grief had made me forgetful for a few months. Your house is just too much to maintain," she continued. "And those stairs, one fall and who knows what could happen." The room was silent now. Even the grandkids had looked up from their phones, sensing the tension. "We can list your house next week," Thomas said. "Market's hot right now. Should sell quickly. The money from the sale will cover several years at Golden Sunset," Emily added, practical as always. "And we've worked it out so anything left over will go into a trust for the grandkids' college funds." They'd planned it all. "My home, my money, my life." I looked around the room at these well-meaning people who saw me as a problem to be solved, who looked at the house I'd built with my own hands and saw only dollar signs and liability. I cleared my throat. "This is quite a gift," I said carefully, feeling the weight of every eye in the room. Emily beamed. "We knew you'd be sensible about it." I set the brochure down on the coffee table, smoothing it flat with hands that had built bridges, rocked babies, and held my wife's as she took her last breath. "No," I said simply. Emily's smile faltered. "What do you mean, no?" "I mean no, thank you. I won't be moving to Golden Sunset next month or any month." The silence that followed was absolute. "Dad," Emily started, using her administrator voice, the one that brooked no argument. "We've already discussed how your memory isn't what it used to be." "My memory is fine," I interrupted. "I remember exactly how many times I've forgotten to turn off the stove. Once, 6 years ago. I remember building that house you're so eager to sell. I remember carrying your mother over the threshold. I remember teaching you to ride a bike in that driveway and bandaging your knees when you fell." Emily's face flushed. "This isn't about memories, Dad. It's about practicality. About what's best for everyone. Best for everyone or best for you?" I asked quietly. Thomas stepped forward. "Frank, be reasonable. Emily's just trying to help. The house is too big for one person." "The maintenance alone, I maintain it just fine," I said. "My garden won the Neighborhood Association Award last summer. Or did you forget that?" Michael, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke. "Dad, no one's trying to rush you. Maybe just take the brochure home, think about it." But I could see it in their faces. This wasn't a suggestion. This was a plan already in motion. They'd discussed me like I was a piece of furniture to be moved. They'd made decisions about my life, my home, my future, without ever asking what I wanted. I stood up, surprising myself with how steady I felt. "Thank you for the party," I said. "I think I'd like to go home now." Emily's eyes widened. "Dad, you can't just leave." "We haven't even discussed." "There's nothing to discuss," I replied. "I'm not moving." "But the deposit," Thomas began, "is refundable, you said." I picked up my coat. "Michael, would you mind driving me home?" Michael looked between me and his sister, conflict written across his face. "Sure, Dad. Let me grab my keys." "Frank," Thomas tried again. At least take the information with you. I looked at the brochure sitting on the table. Keep it, I said. Looks like you might need it before I do. The drive home was silent. Michael kept opening his mouth as if to speak, then closing it again when we pulled up to my house, with its familiar porch and slightly overgrown hedges. I turned to him. I know you were part of this, I said quietly. He had the grace to look ashamed. It wasn't my idea, but you went along with it, he sighed. We worry about you, Dad. Living here alone. I've been alone for 6 years, I reminded him. I'm doing just fine. Are you? He asked. Really? I looked at my son, really looked at him, and saw the genuine concern beneath the misguided execution. Yes, I said firmly. And if that ever changes, I promise you'll be the first to know. I got out of the car and walked up my familiar path, feeling Michael's eyes on my back, checking for signs of infirmity, I supposed. Inside, I hung my coat on the hook by the door, the same hook where it had hung for 30 years. I walked through my quiet house, turning on lights as I went. In the kitchen, I made myself a proper drink, not the watered-down punch from the party, but 2 fingers of the good Scotch Margaret and I had saved for special occasions. I took my drink out to the back porch and sat in my old wicker chair, looking at the garden I'd tended since retirement. The roses Margaret had loved, the bird feeders that attracted cardinals in winter. Well, Maggie, I said aloud to the evening air, it seems our children think I've outlived my usefulness. The silence that answered wasn't as empty as it might have seemed to others. After 50 years of marriage, you learn to hear the echo of your partner's voice, even when they're gone. I could almost hear her indignation on my behalf, almost see her hands on her hips, that fire in her eyes when someone underestimated either of us. You're right, I continued, smiling slightly. I'm not going anywhere. I sipped my scotch, feeling the familiar burn, and made a decision. If Emily and Thomas thought they could push me into some holding pen for inconvenient elderly parents, they had another thing coming. It was time to show them exactly who they were dealing with. The next morning, I woke early and made a list, a habit I'd picked up from Emily, ironically enough. By 9 a.m., I was on the phone with my bank. By noon, I had an appointment with my lawyer for the following day. When Emily called that evening, her voice was tight with controlled frustration. Dad, about yesterday? Yes, about that, I interrupted. I've been thinking. You have? Hope crept into her voice. Yes, I'm going to need all the information about that deposit you put down. I'll reimburse you, of course, she paused. That's not necessary, Dad. I insist, I said firmly. And while we're discussing finances, I think it's time I updated my will. The silence on the other end of the line was deeply satisfying. Your will? She finally asked. Is everything okay? Everything's fine, I assured her. Just putting my affairs in order. Isn't that what you wanted? Another pause. Of course. That's responsible. I thought so. I've made an appointment with Harrison for tomorrow. Harrison James had been my attorney for 30 years. He'd handled Margaret's estate and knew exactly how I felt about being managed. Would you like me to come with you? Emily offered a little too quickly. That won't be necessary, I replied. But thank you for your concern. After we hung up, I smiled to myself. The game was on, and they had no idea they were playing against a master. The meeting with Harrison went exactly as I'd hoped. When I explained what had happened at my birthday party, his bushy eyebrows nearly shot off his forehead. They gave you a nursing home brochure as a birthday present? Harrison shook his head in disbelief. In all my years of elder law, that's a new one. Complete with a move-in date, I added. Harrison leaned back in his leather chair, fingers steepled. And you want to change your will in response? Not change it exactly. Protect it. I met his eyes. I need to make sure they can't declare me incompetent and take control. Do you have reason to believe they might try that? I thought about Emily's face when I'd refused her gift, the calculation there, the frustration. Let's just say I'm not taking any chances. By the time I left Harrison's office, I had a plan. He'd arranged for me to undergo a comprehensive cognitive assessment with a respected neurologist. The results would be filed with my updated will, establishing my mental competence beyond any legal challenge. I'd also removed Emily as my medical proxy, replacing her with my younger sister Ruth, who at 73 was no spring chicken herself, but had more common sense in her pinky finger than Emily had in her entire body. "You're making the right move, Frank," Harrison said as he walked me out. "Too many people wait until it's too late." The next few days were quiet. Too quiet. Michael called once, asking awkwardly if I needed anything from the hardware store. I could hear the discomfort in his voice, the guilt. Emily didn't call at all. I used the time to do some investigating of my own. Started with a simple Google search for Golden Sunset Retirement Community. The website was exactly what you'd expect. Smiling seniors playing cards, elegant dining rooms, promises of dignity in your golden years. The real information came from the reviews. Most were positive, written by family members rather than residents, I noticed. But a few told a different story. Complaints about understaffing, about residents being over-medicated to keep them manageable, about possessions mysteriously disappearing. I dug deeper, finding local news stories. Golden Sunset had been cited twice in the past year for violations. Nothing major enough to make headlines, but concerning nonetheless. And then I found something that made my blood run cold. Golden Sunset was owned by Meridian Healthcare Group, the same company where Thomas sat on the board of directors. The same company whose stock had jumped 15% last quarter. After acquiring 3 new properties, I sat back in my chair, the pieces clicking into place with sickening clarity. This wasn't just about them thinking I couldn't manage on my own. This was about money. Thomas had a financial stake in filling those rooms. My phone rang, startling me out of my thoughts. Emily's name flashed on the screen. "Hello, Emily," I answered, keeping my voice neutral. "Dad." She sounded businesslike. "I just wanted to check on you. You seemed upset at the party, did I?" I asked mildly. "You know you did." She sighed. "Dad, we're just trying to look out for you by making decisions about my life without consulting me. We knew you'd resist the idea," she said, as if that justified everything. "No one wants to think about needing help. I don't need help. Emily, I'm perfectly capable of living independently. For now, maybe." Her voice took on that patient tone she used with difficult patients. "But what about next year? Or the year after that? Golden Sunset has a waiting list, Dad. We can't just call them when you have a fall or another kitchen incident. Another kitchen incident. As if one forgotten stove burner 6 years ago had been part of a pattern. "I appreciate your concern," I said carefully, "but my living arrangements are not up for discussion. The deposit expires next week," she pressed. "After that, who knows when another opening will come up?" "Then I guess you'd better call them for a refund." Emily's exasperation was audible through the phone. "Why are you being so stubborn about this?" Thomas's mother was exactly the same way. And do you know what happened? She fell down her stairs and lay there for 2 days before anyone found her. "I'm sorry that happened," I said. "But I'm not Thomas's mother." "No, you're my father, and I'm trying to prevent something like that happening to you." I took a deep breath. "Emily, have I ever given you reason to think I can't take care of myself? Have I fallen? Have I forgotten medications? Have I gotten lost driving? No, but then why are we having this conversation? Because prevention is better than reaction. Because I don't want to get a call that something has happened to you when we could have prevented it." Her voice cracked slightly on the last word, and despite everything, I felt a twinge of sympathy. She was afraid of losing me, of me becoming dependent, of having to watch me decline the way we'd watched Margaret decline. But fear wasn't a good enough reason to strip me of my autonomy. "I understand you're worried," I said, softening my tone. "But this is my decision to make, not yours." She was quiet for a moment. "Will you at least come see the place? Just take a tour?" I thought about what I'd discovered about Thomas's connection to Golden Sunset, about the violations, about the reviews. "No," I said firmly. "I won't. Dad, Emily, listen to me. I built that house you're so eager to sell. Every nail, every board. Your mother and I sacrificed for decades to pay it off. It's not just a property to me. It's my life's work. It's where your mother took her last breath. And I will not be pushed out of it because it's convenient for you." Convenient? Her voice rose. You think this is about convenience? Do you have any idea how much time I've spent researching options for you? Making calls, getting on waiting list? Time you could have saved by simply asking me what I wanted, because you're so reasonable about these things? She gave a humorless laugh. Dad, you're still using the same ancient flip phone because you refuse to learn how to use a smartphone. My phone works just fine, I said, feeling defensive despite myself. That's not the point. The point is you resist change, even when it's for your own good. I took a deep breath, reining in my temper. Emily, I appreciate that you think you're helping. But this conversation is over. I'm not moving to Golden Sunset or any other facility. Not now, not next month, not next year. Is that clear enough for you? The silence that followed was heavy with tension. Crystal clear, she finally said, her voice cold. I'll let Thomas know about the deposit. After she hung up, I sat holding the phone for a long time, feeling shaken. It wasn't just the argument. It was the realization that my daughter saw me as a problem to be managed rather than a person to be respected. The cognitive assessment with Dr. Patel was scheduled for the following Tuesday. I prepared by getting a good night's sleep and doing the daily crossword puzzle, as was my habit. The tests themselves were straightforward. Memory exercises, problem-solving tasks, questions about current events. You're sharper than most of my patients half your age. Mr. Mitchell, Dr. Patel said with a smile as she concluded the assessment. I see no cognitive impairment whatsoever. Tell that to my daughter, I muttered. Dr. Patel's expression grew serious. Family conflicts about independence are common at your stage of life, Mr. Mitchell. Have you considered family counseling? I nearly laughed at the thought of Emily sitting through therapy sessions, being told she wasn't in charge. I don't think that's going to happen, I said. Dr. Patel nodded. Well, my report will be clear. You're fully capable of making your own decisions. I left her office, feeling vindicated, if still troubled by the rift with my children. The Cold War with Emily continued. Michael made awkward attempts at peacemaking, calling more frequently, offering to help with yard work I didn't need help with. Then came the evening that changed everything. I was in my workshop, restoring an antique dresser I'd found at an estate sale. Woodworking had been my hobby since retirement. The feel of the tools in my hands, the smell of sawdust, the satisfaction of creating something tangible. I'd been at it for hours, lost in the rhythm of sanding and finishing. When I finally straightened up, the room spun alarmingly. Black spots danced at the edges of my vision. My heart raced, then seemed to stutter in my chest. Not now, I thought, gripping the workbench. Not like this. I fumbled for my phone, managed to dial 911, gasped out my address to the dispatcher as the pressure in my chest intensified. Help is on the way, sir, the voice said. Is there someone there with you? No, I managed. Alone? Is there a neighbor you could call? Someone who could let the paramedics in? I thought of Mrs. Abernathy next door, but couldn't remember her number. No doors, unlocked. I slid to the floor, phone still clutched in my hand. Thought of Margaret, of Emily and Michael. Of all the things I hadn't said, the paramedics found me semi-conscious. I remember fragments of the ride to the hospital, the wail of sirens, the pinch of an IV, a young woman's voice saying something about blood pressure. I woke up in a hospital room, the steady beep of monitors keeping time with my heart. A nurse noticed I was awake and came over to check my vitals. Mr. Mitchell, good to see you back with us. How are you feeling? Like I've been hit by a truck, I croaked, my throat dry. That's to be expected. You had a mild heart attack. The doctor will be by soon to explain everything. Heart attack. The words hung in the air between us. Not a surprise exactly. I was 75 after all, but a sobering reality check nonetheless. We've contacted your daughter, the nurse continued. She's on her way. Emily. I closed my eyes, imagining her expression when she heard the news. The validation she'd feel. See, Dad? This is exactly what we were worried about. Dr. Reynolds came by shortly after, a serious man with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. You're lucky, Mr. Mitchell, he said, reviewing my chart. Minimal damage to the heart muscle. With medication and some lifestyle changes, there's no reason you can't make a full recovery. When can I go home? I asked. He looked up, surprised. We'll want to keep you for observation at least until tomorrow. After that, it depends on your support system at home. Do you live alone? Before I could answer, I heard Emily's voice from the doorway. He does, which is exactly the problem. She swept into the room, handbag clutched like a weapon, Thomas 2 steps behind her. Her face was a mask of worry and vindication. Dad, thank God you're all right. She leaned down to kiss my cheek, then immediately turned to the doctor. I'm Emily Lawson, Frank's daughter. This is my husband, Thomas. We've been trying to convince my father to move to assisted living for months now. Dr. Reynolds glanced between us. I see. What exactly happened? Emily demanded. The nurse just said heart attack. As Dr. Reynolds explained the medical details, I watched Emily's expression grow more resolved with each word. By the time he finished, she was nodding as if everything he said confirmed what she'd known all along. So, he shouldn't be living alone, she concluded. Dr. Reynolds was more measured. With proper medication and monitoring, many cardiac patients continue to live independently. It really depends on Mr. Mitchell's overall health and support system, which is exactly what we've been saying, Thomas interjected smoothly. In fact, we've already secured a place for him at Golden Sunset. They have 24-hour medical staff. I found my voice. I'm not going to Golden Sunset, Emily sighed dramatically. Dad, you just had a heart attack alone in your house. If Mrs. Abernathy hadn't heard the ambulance and called me, we wouldn't even have known, Mr. Mitchell, Dr. Reynolds said carefully. While I can't make specific recommendations about your living situation, it is important that you have access to help, if needed, especially in the first few weeks of recovery. See? Emily pounced. Doctor's orders. That's not what he said, I pointed out. Dr. Reynolds looked uncomfortable. I'll let you discuss this as a family. The nurse will be in shortly with your medication. He made a strategic retreat, leaving us to our private war. As soon as the door closed, Emily turned to me, her expression a mixture of concern and triumph. This changes everything. Dad, you can't possibly argue that you should be living alone now. Actually, I can, I said, stronger than I felt. Dr. Reynolds just said many people continue living independently after heart attacks, with support systems, she countered, which you don't have. I have friends, neighbors, who didn't even know you were in trouble until they heard sirens. She threw her hands up in frustration. Dad, be reasonable. This is exactly the scenario we were trying to prevent. Thomas placed a calming hand on her shoulder. What Emily means is that we're concerned, Frank. A heart attack is serious. Golden Sunset has medical staff available 24/7. I looked between them, seeing the genuine worry in Emily's eyes, but also something else. A calculated assessment of the situation and how it could be used to achieve her ends. And suddenly, I was tired. Tired of fighting. Tired of defending my independence. Tired of being seen as a problem rather than a person. Fine, I said quietly. Emily blinked, surprised by my capitulation. Fine, I'll consider Golden Sunset. After I recover. The relief on her face was palpable. Really, that's wonderful, Dad. You won't regret it. But, I continued, I have conditions. Her smile faltered slightly. What conditions? I want to recover at home first. At least a month. With a home health aide if necessary, but in my own house. Emily and Thomas exchanged glances, and, I added, before I make any decisions about moving, I want full financial disclosure about Golden Sunset. Ownership, board members, investment structures, everything. Thomas's expression shifted subtly. Why would you need that? I met his gaze steadily. Because I like to know who profits from my decisions. A beat of silence followed. Thomas's face hardened. What exactly are you implying, Frank? I'm not implying anything. I'm stating a condition. Emily looked confused, glancing between us. Thomas, what is he talking about? But Thomas's eyes hadn't left mine. He knew exactly what I was talking about. Your father seems to think there's some kind of conspiracy here, he said carefully. Not a conspiracy, I corrected. Just a conflict of interest. Meridian Healthcare Group owns Golden Sunset, doesn't it, Thomas? The same company where you sit on the board of directors. Emily's eyes widened. What? The silence that filled my hospital room was deafening. Emily's head swiveled between Thomas and me, her expression morphing from confusion to disbelief. Thomas, she finally said. Is that true? Thomas straightened his tie, a nervous habit I'd observed over the years. It's not how Frank is making it sound. How exactly should it sound? I asked, feeling strangely calm despite the monitors tracking my heart rate. You sit on the board of a company that owns nursing homes, including Golden Sunset, and you never thought to mention this when pushing me to move there. I sit on many boards, Thomas said defensively. And yes, Meridian is one of them. But that has nothing to do with why we think Golden Sunset is right for you. Emily's face had gone pale. You never told me about this connection. Because it's irrelevant, Thomas insisted. Golden Sunset is the best facility in the area. That's why my mother was there. That's why we want Frank there. And the fact that you personally benefit when rooms are filled. I pressed. That's just a happy coincidence? Thomas's face flushed. This is absurd. I'm trying to help you and you're accusing me of... What, some kind of elder exploitation? I'm not accusing you of anything, I said carefully. I'm simply asking for transparency. Emily sank into the chair beside my bed, looking stunned. I can't believe this. Emily, Thomas turned to her, his voice softening. You know this was about your father's safety. Not money? She didn't respond, just stared at her hands. A nurse chose that moment to enter, breaking the tense atmosphere. I need to check Mr. Mitchell's vitals. Would you mind stepping out for a few minutes? Emily rose mechanically. Of course. We'll be in the waiting room, Dad. As they left, Thomas giving me one last hard look over his shoulder, I exhaled slowly. The nurse checked my blood pressure, frowning slightly at the reading. Try to stay calm, Mr. Mitchell. Stress isn't good for your heart. I almost laughed. Easier said than done. When she left, I reached for the phone beside my bed. Despite my ancient flip phone at home, I knew how to use a hospital phone just fine. I called Michael first, filling him in on what had happened, both the heart attack and the revelation about Thomas. Jesus, Dad, he said, shock evident in his voice. I had no idea about Thomas's connection to that place. Are you sure? Look it up yourself, I told him. Meridian Healthcare Group, Board of Directors. I will, he promised, and I'm on my way to the hospital. Just hang tight, okay? My next call was to Harrison. Despite the late hour, he answered on the third ring. Frank, is everything all right? Not exactly, I said, and explained the situation. Harrison listened without interrupting, then said, This changes things. If Thomas has a financial interest in your placement at Golden Sunset, that's a serious conflict of interest. Combined with your recent cognitive assessment and this push to sell your house, we might be looking at a case of attempted financial exploitation. I don't want to sue my son-in-law, I said wearily. I just want to be left alone. Sometimes the threat of legal action is more effective than actual litigation, Harrison said thoughtfully. Let me make some calls. By the time Michael arrived, I'd had time to think. My initial anger had settled into something colder, more strategic. The heart attack had been a wake-up call, but not in the way Emily and Thomas thought. It reminded me that life was short, and I wasn't going to spend what time I had left being manipulated by my own family. Michael looked terrible when he walked in, hair uncombed, eyes red from what might have been tears. Dad, he said, gripping my hand tightly, you scared the hell out of me. I scared myself, I admitted. He sat heavily in the chair Emily had vacated. I checked what you said about Thomas. You're right. He's been on Meridian's board for 3 years, gets stock options, director's fees, the works. I nodded, not surprised but still disappointed. Did you know? I asked. Michael shook his head vehemently. No, God no. I knew he was pushing the Golden Sunset thing hard, but I thought it was just because his mom had been there. Emily was worried about you living alone, and he sort of amplified those concerns. And the house? I asked quietly. Was selling it part of the original plan? Michael had the grace to look ashamed. Emily mentioned that it made sense financially, that the money from the sale could cover years of care and anything left could go toward the kids' college funds. He met my eyes. I didn't like it, but I didn't fight it either. "I'm sorry, Dad." His honesty was both painful and refreshing. "At least you're telling me the truth now." "What are you going to do?" he asked. Before I could answer, the door opened again. Emily stood there alone, her face strained. "Can I talk to you?" she asked me, then noticed Michael. "Oh, you're here?" "Yeah, I'm here," Michael said, an edge to his voice. "Where's Thomas? Off calling his Meridian buddies?" Emily flinched. "He went home. We had words." "Good," Michael said bluntly. "Stop it, both of you," I said firmly. "Emily, come in and close the door." She did as I asked, perching awkwardly on the edge of the other visitor's chair. For a moment, none of us spoke. Then Emily broke the silence. "Dad, I swear I didn't know about Thomas's connection to Golden Sunset." "I believe you," I said, and found that I did. Emily could be controlling and stubborn, but outright deception wasn't her style. "But that doesn't change the fact that you were ready to move me out of my home against my wishes." She looked down. "I was worried about you." "Were you? Or were you worried about having to deal with me getting older?" Her head snapped up. "That's not fair." "Isn't it? You never once asked what I wanted, Emily. Not once. You decided what was best for me, made all the arrangements, and presented it as a fait accompli at my birthday party, of all places." Tears welled in her eyes. I thought you'd resist any suggestion of moving, so it would be easier to present it as already decided." "Easier for whom?" I asked quietly. She had no answer for that. Michael cleared his throat. "The thing is, Dad, we do worry about you. The heart attack proves we weren't completely wrong to be concerned. Being concerned is natural," I conceded. "Taking over my life isn't." "So, what happens now?" Emily asked, wiping at her eyes. I took a deep breath. "Now, we start over. On my terms." The next morning, Dr. Reynolds discharged me with prescriptions, follow-up appointments, and strict instructions about diet and exercise. Michael drove me home, Emily following in her own car. The silence as we pulled up to my house was weighted with unspoken words. Inside, the house felt different somehow. The scene of my collapse, the workshop where I'd nearly died, held a new significance. But it was still my home. Still the place where I felt most myself. Emily hovered anxiously as I settled into my favorite chair. "Can I get you anything? Water? Tea?" "I'm fine," I said, then softened my tone. "But thank you." Michael brought in a small bag of toiletries and medications from the hospital. "I'll put these in the bathroom." When he returned, I gestured for both of them to sit. "We need to talk about how things are going to be moving forward." They exchanged glances, but sat obediently, like children called to account. "First," I said, "I'm not moving to Golden Sunset or any other facility. Not now, not in the foreseeable future." Emily opened her mouth to protest, but I held up a hand. "That's non-negotiable, Emily. My cognitive assessment came back perfect, and Dr. Reynolds believes I can continue living independently with proper precautions." "What kind of precautions?" Michael asked. "I've agreed to wear one of those medical alert devices," I said, touching the lightweight pendant already around my neck beneath my shirt. "And I'll have a home health aide come by 3 times a week, initially." "That's reasonable," Emily admitted reluctantly. "I'm also having some modifications made to the house. Grab bars in the bathroom, a first-floor bedroom option for when the stairs become too much." I looked at them both. I'm not in denial about aging. I just want to do it on my own terms, in my own home. Michael nodded. "Sounds like you've thought this through." "I have." I shifted my gaze to Emily. "As for Thomas, I don't want to create a rift in your marriage, but I need you to understand something. What he did, concealing his financial, Interest in Golden Sunset was unethical at best and potentially illegal at worst. Emily paled. Illegal? Harrison believes there's a case for attempted financial exploitation, the combination of pushing me into a facility where Thomas benefits financially while simultaneously encouraging the sale of my home and redirecting those assets. I let the implications hang in the air. Dad, I don't think Thomas meant, Emily began. I don't care what he meant, I interrupted. I care what he did. And what he did was put his financial interests above my well-being and autonomy. The truth of my words seemed to hit Emily like a physical blow. She slumped in her chair, looking suddenly exhausted. "What are you going to do?" she whispered. "That depends on Thomas," I said. "Harrison is drafting a letter outlining the problematic nature of his actions. If Thomas resigns from Meridian's board and issues a formal apology, I'm willing to let this go. Otherwise, we proceed with legal action." Michael let out a low whistle. "You're not messing around." "No, I'm not," I agreed. "I've spent my life building things that last. Bridges, this house, this family. I won't let anyone tear them down, not even people I love." Emily was crying silently now, tears tracking down her cheeks. "I'm so sorry, Dad. I really thought I was helping." Something in her broken voice reached past my anger. I remembered her as a little girl, fierce and determined even then, organizing her brother's toys when he wouldn't, making lists of chores that needed doing. She'd always been a fixer, a planner. It was how she showed love. "I know you were trying to help in your way," I said, my tone gentler. "But Emily, you have to understand, helping someone means supporting their choices, not making choices for them." She nodded, wiping at her tears. "I understand that now. I really do." "Good," I said, "because I need your help. Both of you. But on my terms, not as caretakers managing a problem, but as children supporting their father." Michael leaned forward. "Whatever you need, Dad, just ask. Right now, I need space, time to recover, time to feel like myself again." I looked between them. "Can you give me that?" They both nodded, though Emily looked like it physically pained her not to start rearranging my pill bottles or checking my refrigerator for heart-healthy foods. "And Thomas?" she asked hesitantly. "That's between him and Harrison for now," I said firmly, "but eventually it will be between him and me." After they left, with promises to check in by phone the next day, I sat alone in my quiet house. The key afternoon sun slanted through the windows Margaret had insisted on enlarging during our last renovation. "We need more light, Roy," she'd said. "As we get older, we'll crave the sunshine more." She'd been right, as she so often was. I dozed in my chair, waking to the sound of the doorbell. Groggy and stiff, I made my way to the door to find a young woman in scrubs standing on my porch. "Mr. Mitchell." "I'm Sophia from Comprehensive Home Health. I'm your assigned aide." She was perhaps 30, with kind eyes and a no-nonsense manner that reminded me of Margaret. "You're earlier than I expected," I said, stepping back to let her in. "Your daughter called and requested we start immediately," she explained. "But I can come back tomorrow if you prefer." I almost sent her away on principle, another example of Emily making decisions for me, but thought better of it. The heart attack had been a reality check. "Pride wouldn't keep me alive. No, now is fine," I said. "Though I should warn you, I'm not much for being fussed over," Sophia smiled. "Most of my patients say that. How about we start with a cup of tea, and you can tell me what kind of help you actually want, rather than what your daughter thinks you need." I liked her immediately. The next few weeks fell into a new rhythm. Sophia came Monday, Wednesday, and Friday mornings. She helped with medication management, took my vitals, and assisted with the increasingly complicated exercises Dr. Reynolds had prescribed. But mostly, she listened. To my stories about building bridges across impossible terrain, about raising children who grew into strangers, then back into family again, about loving Margaret for 50 years and learning to live without her. Michael visited weekends, often bringing his youngest son, who, to my surprise, showed genuine interest in learning woodworking. Emily called daily but respected my request for space, though I could hear the effort it cost her not to barrage me with questions about my diet and medication schedule. Thomas remained conspicuously absent until the day Harrison's letter arrived at his office. That evening he appeared on my doorstep, ashen-faced and without his usual confidence. "May I come in, Frank?" he asked formally. I considered turning him away, but stepped aside instead. "Living room." He sat perched on the edge of the sofa, hands clasped between his knees. "I've resigned from Meridian's board." "I know," I said. "Harrison informed me." "I also—" He hesitated. "I've returned the deposit to Golden Sunset and removed your name from their waiting list." I nodded, waiting. "Frank, I want to apologize," he said finally. "My actions were inappropriate. I convinced myself I was acting in your best interest. But I should have disclosed my connection to Meridian from the beginning." "Yes, you should have." He winced at my bluntness. "I understand if you want to pursue legal action. I wouldn't blame you. I studied my son-in-law, this man who had been in my family for 20 years, but whom I realized I barely knew." "Why did you do it, Thomas?" "Really?" He looked away. "Meridian has been struggling financially. The pandemic hit elder care facilities hard. As a board member, my compensation is tied to performance. I thought, I convinced myself that it was a win-win situation. You'd get excellent care, and Meridian would get a steady revenue stream. And you'd get your performance bonus," I added. He had the grace to look ashamed. "Yes, and my house. Was selling it your idea or Emily's?" "Both, I suppose," he admitted. "The real estate market is hot right now. Your property has appreciated considerably." "It seemed practical." "Practical," I repeated. That word again. "I'm truly sorry, Frank. I believed he was sorry. Sorry he'd been caught, at least. But I'd seen enough of life to know that holding grudges only poisoned the one holding them. I won't be pursuing legal action," I said finally. "But things have changed between us, Thomas. Trust, once broken, isn't easily repaired." "I understand," he said quietly. "Do you?" I leaned forward. "Because here's what I need you to understand completely. I built this life, this house, this family. I worked 60-hour weeks for decades. I sacrificed vacations and new cars and fancy clothes to make sure Emily had everything she needed. I'm not a problem to be solved or an asset to be managed. I'm a person who has earned the right to live on my own terms." Thomas nodded, unable to meet my eyes. "Tell Emily she can come by tomorrow," I said, rising to indicate our conversation was over. "We have some things to discuss." After he left, I walked through my house in the gathering twilight. The home I'd built, the life I'd defended, the independence I'd reclaimed. That gift of a nursing home brochure had been a wake-up call, but not in the way Emily and Thomas had intended. It had shown me that protecting my autonomy required vigilance, strategy, and sometimes hard confrontation. It had revealed who truly respected me and who saw me as a burden. Most importantly, it had reminded me that aging doesn't mean surrendering control. It means adapting on your own terms. 6 months later, my heart was stronger. The home modifications were complete, including a state-of-the-art workshop on the first floor. Sophia still visited, now more friend than aide. Emily and I had reached a new understanding based on mutual respect rather than her management. Michael's son had completed his first independent woodworking project, a small jewelry box that now held Margaret's necklaces. Thomas remained cautiously on the periphery of family gatherings, humbled but included. One afternoon, as I sat on my porch watching the neighborhood children play, Emily joined me with 2 glasses of iced tea. "How are you feeling, Dad?" she asked. But the question held genuine curiosity rather than assessment. "I'm feeling," I smiled, "like a man who's exactly where he belongs." She nodded, understanding at last. "I think Mom would be proud of how you stood your ground." "Your mother," I said, "taught me that loving someone means supporting their choices, even when you don't agree with them." Emily sipped her tea thoughtfully. "I'm trying to learn that lesson. I know you are." I patted her hand. "That's all any of us can do. Keep learning, keep growing. No matter our age." We sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun begin its descent behind the trees Margaret and I had planted decades ago. The branches now strong enough to weather any storm. Sometimes, the most unexpected gifts come disguised as challenges. That nursing home brochure had been meant to take away my independence. Instead, it had given me the opportunity to reclaim it, more fiercely, more completely than ever before. And in that reclaiming, I had taught my children the most important lesson of all, that respect isn't a courtesy we extend to the elderly. It's a fundamental right we all deserve, at every age, until our final breath.